Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel, and I am back and more confident than ever that we have a plausible explanation for October 9th, Revelation in the Stars, and the coming judgment by fire on the anniversary of the flood, November 13th, 2024. So, this video is going to go in depth and cover the complete timeline, including the two witnesses, the woman being taken care of in the wilderness, showing how the days of Noah directly line up with appointed times, and how this only happens on a full moon start of month calendar and not any other calendar. So let's get started. Um, so, as you know, I created the documentary Revelation in the Stars, where I was expecting everything to go down on October 9th. That would be the Atzeret, the last great day of tabernacles. But it turns out that that's the start of exactly 7 years from the Day of Atonement at the end of the tribulation, when the victory is won, and then from there, Israel cleans up bodies for 7 months. So let's see what this looks like. Now, the problem with the original Atzeret theory was nothing was lining up with the 1,260 days for the son clothed in sackcloth or the woman in the wilderness. Those day counts didn't work. But now that we start on the anniversary of the flood, according to the LXX Septuagint, that which starts to flood on the 27th day of the 8th month on today's calendar, but the second month in the calendar of the flood. So what this looks like is that we have a nuclear war rapture on Israel's 76th and a half birthday exactly 76.5 years old, on the 27th day of the 8th month, which is November 13th, which happens to be 33 days after the Atzeret, which was 22 days after the start of the year on the Feast of Trumpets. Then, after the Babylon falls in a single hour and a third of the world is destroyed and burned up with fire, you have demon locusts coming out of the abyss, tormenting mankind for 150 days, but it doesn't hurt any vegetation. I believe that this is radiation fallout, and of course most of the fallout or rain will happen in the first 40 days. And then after 150 days, about 5 months, then the majority of the fallout, the half-life kicks in, and it starts to get closer to background radiation levels. Still higher than normal, but most people can probably go out and about without having to worry about radiation burns by that time. Well, 150 days from November 13th puts you on the first day of the first month on a Jubilee year. So I believe I actually have an error here. There's not a blood moon on that particular day. So the Jubilee year begins, which, to make sense, freedom from the radiation. Seems like a good way to start your Jubilee year. And then if you go another 150 days, right, because this is the 150 days that the flood waters were rising on the land, and then 150 days that they were receding. You go another 150 days, and you end up on the first day of the 6th month, which is a new full moon, right, beginning of the month on a full moon calendar. It is also the first day of the 11th month, which is when the Septuagint says that the tops of the mountains were visible. And 40 days from there, that's when Noah let out the dove for the first time, the dove and the raven. So that actually lines up perfectly this particular year. It doesn't do this every single year because depending upon when you have 13th month and various other factors, it doesn't line up. But this year, it lines up. So we continue with 1,260 days for the two witnesses from the day of the flood on November 13th. And we end up exactly on first fruits in 2028. First fruits is the 16th day of the first month. This is when Yeshua arose from the dead. And this is the last day the two witnesses are seen. They're raised up and everyone is in awe as they're taken up into heaven on first fruits, which means they'll probably be killed on Passover 3 days earlier, being raised on the third day. So that's perfect typology fitting with the day counts there. And of course, in my, I want to actually go back and address one thing. The first day of the 6th month is when Haggai, the prophet, received a vision or a word from Yahuwah saying that it's time to build the temple. So I suspect that after nuclear World War III, people hide because of radiation, and people start coming out, and I'm thinking things are going to get very spiritual, and people are going to start waking up. They're going to want to rebuild the temple, and I think the temple will possibly be started construction on 9/9/25. So next September, we could see the temple being constructed. And of course, that sets up everything for the Antichrist by the midpoint of the tribulation. So at that midpoint, that's the end of 80 years of Israel being a nation on May of 2028. And there is a sign in Revelation 12, which I have previously covered, that appears in the sky on this day. And I identified that several months ago. We go all the way to the end on the Day of Atonement, and then we clean up for 7 months, which puts us just in time to have second Passover be fulfilled. So that's my timeline in a nutshell. Let's look at some of the proofs here, and you can get a link to this Medium post in the description of the video. The way I did this drawing is each of these boxes I did a pixel for a day, so that we can verify that things actually do line up, and it's not just, there's not subtle math errors throwing things off. So this is accurate to the pixel. So evidence that Israel is exactly 76.5 years old. You take 365.25 days in a solar year. You multiply it by 76.5 and you get 27,941.625. That's how many days you get. You add that to May 14th, 1948, when Israel became a nation and the United States recognized it, and you get November 13th, the day of the flood, on the LXX Septuagint. So that fact checks out. 5 months or 150 days for the demon from the abyss, or the fallout and the waters rising. I covered that earlier. So we add that to November 13th, and we get April 12th, 2025, and that's the torment ending. Then we have the two witnesses. We just go ahead and add those dates here. November 13th, 1260 takes you to April 26th. So that's the end of that many days. So you have to go back. The 25th is the start of the day, the start of the 1260th day would be the April 25th, and that would be 16th of the first month, which is first fruits. Revelation 11:11 says, "But after 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered into the two witnesses, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell upon those who saw them." So that's the end of the two witnesses as they are taken up into heaven. That means that they are killed between April 22nd and April 23rd on Passover, the 14th day of the first month. And then after that, the woman flees into the wilderness. So if you haven't seen this video, the Revelation 12 sea dragon sign, this is the sign in the stars of when we had the Revelation 12 sign on October 9th, which was Draco, and the tail that spans a third of the stars and the throwing stars from heaven with a meteor shower on October 9th. But then he's thrown into the sea. He's thrown down, right? So Draco is in the north, and Cetus is in the south. He's thrown down to the sea. Woe to the creatures of the sea. So let's look at Revelation 12 here, some experts. Then another sign appeared, this is the October 9th one, in heaven. A huge red dragon, Draco, with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 royal crowns on his head. There's another constellation that gives him his crown. And the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and to the sea. So the constellations with with Cetus is known as the sea. That's where you've got Pisces, the fish, and several other sea-related constellations. With great fury, the devil, Cetus, the sea dragon, has come down to you, knowing he only has a short time. So Cetus, on this day, has a crown of 7. 4 from the Lamb, and then you've got Saturn, Mars, Mercury, and the moon and the sun are all right there in the crown of Cetus. And of course, you've got the Rapture fish, the woman fleeing on eagle's wings, while Saturn and Mars, which represents the beast, making war with the remnant of her seed. So I go into greater detail in that video. Please check it out. But that's at the midpoint of the tribulation. And of course, this also lines up perfectly with the desolation of the abomination occurring in spring of 2028, the end of the 1335th year after the Dome of the Rock, which has an inscription dating 72 AH. That's the Islamic calendar. And 72 AH on the Islamic calendar ends May 1962 AD. So you would start counting. So that would be the biblical year would have started in April 1962, and that would have been the 1290th year. So you start counting. The first year is 963 AD. That's the first biblical year, and the last, and that 1335th year ends May Passover time on 2028. So that's when we should expect that desolation going on the Temple Mount. And of course, if the temple was rebuilt a year from now, then that would be another thing that could be there and destroyed. So Antichrist could go there, declare himself to be God, and all kinds of things. All right. Israel reaches their 80th Gregorian anniversary, just 25 days after that, so the fig tree generation is fulfilled. And then Israel is restored on the Day of Atonement, 2031, and then they purify the land, because there's so many dead bodies from the whole world being there, the Battle of Armageddon, that it takes them 7 months to purify the land from the dead bodies and to bury everything. That's according to Ezekiel 39, verse 12. For 7 months, the house of Israel will be burying them in order to cleanse the land. So, On a full moon calendar, the Day of Atonement 2031 is October 9th and 10th, which is the 7-year anniversary of the revelation of the 12 sign, and the end of 7 months. So on April 25th, there is a blood moon, marking the end of the tribulation. So that's April 25th, 2032. So there you go, second Passover. There's the sign. So, but not everyone agrees with the full moon calendar. And if you don't agree with that, well, what about the sliver moon calendar? I put the same dates, use the same theory, just using that calendar, and nothing works out. The Septuagint sliver flood would start November 29th. If you go with the Masoretic text, which most Bibles have, it would be November 19th. And of course, Passover would be April 9th and Day of Atonement. So I went ahead and calculated 1,260 days from those dates and 150 days and saw where it put things. So the 1,260th day from be May 11th, 2028. You completely missed Passover. You missed the sign in the stars. You, I guess, technically get just in before Israel turns 80 years old. And that's, that's the 15th of the second month. So it's not an appointed time. So I guess 15th of the second month would be unleavened bread of second Passover. If you go with the Masoretic text, it's like the second day, or I guess the fifth day of the second month, and that's definitely not an appointed time. And then if you add another 1,260 to reach the end of the woman's care in the wilderness, you land on October 24th, 2031, which is a full month after the Day of Atonement, and isn't an appointed time at all. So I was very surprised to see this. You just can't shift the calendar by 15 days to get from one to the other, because the 13th month falls on different years depending upon whether you're using the full moon or the sliver. So some years the full moon calendar is ahead, like this year. Other years the full moon calendar is 15 days behind. Let's talk about second Passover for a second, because that sort of marks the end of cleaning up the bodies in the beginning of the millennial reign, and it'd be the first working year, because the 2031 is a Shemitah year, so this would be the first working year after the 7 years of war. So on the first day of the second month, they assembled the whole congregation together, and they registered themselves according to the number of names. So basically, everyone who's 20 years and older were registered on the first day of the second month. The temple was constructed in the second month. Now Solomon began to build the house of Yahuwah at Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where Yahuwah had appeared to his father David, at the place that David had prepared on the threshing floor. And he began to build on the second day of the second month. First day of the second month being a new moon day. So that's when Solomon began to build, and it's also repeated when they came out of captivity. The second temple they started on the second month. They set forward to work the house of the Lord. All right, here's an update on the lunar occlusion of Saturn I mentioned in my last video. So this is when the moon comes and covers Saturn in the night sky. And I mentioned that it's occurred 11 times in a row since the April 8th eclipse, or 3 days before the April 8th eclipse that went over the United States. And that Saturn is a symbol of Babylon the Great, which is thrown into a river and Saturn is standing still on the day of the flood under the bowl of wrath. It doesn't get better than that. But the moon has covered it 11 times. But after these 11 times, there are 77 lunar months, or about 6.2 years, before it happens again. So after this big streak of 11 in a row, we go 77 months without anything happening. And then if we go backwards, there's been 54 lunar months beforehand. So 4 years with nothing, followed by 11 in a row, followed by 4 years of nothing. If that's not a giant finger pointing at this year being significant for Saturn being covered, never to be seen again, Babylon falling, I don't know what is. Some people questioned whether or not the days of Noah actually said that the tops of the mountains were visible in the 11th month, which is what I stated the Septuagint said. In the comments, somebody posted that they couldn't find that in any translation, and I went to look real quick. I couldn't find it, so I said, oh man, I might have to post a correction. So I researched it, and I found it. I knew I had vetted it, but sometimes you go back and check again, and you can't find it readily. But hypothetically, if it was the 10th month, then this is what the timeline of the Noah would be. However, this is the source that I originally had that claimed it was the 11th month in the Septuagint. So I was relying on this source. I had pretty sure I had vetted it as well, but I couldn't find the scripture that proved it. Well, I went and I found the scripture that proved it. So it's the LXX Septuagint Genesis 8:5 on the first month, the 11th month, on the first of the month. So that's what it said there. Now I went and clicked this source button here, and it took me to a text that said the 10th month. I'm like, well, all right. So I looked a little bit further, and I found this interlinear that shows you the Greek, shows you the word 11. And there's the source right here. So therefore, my original video was correct that is a difference between the Septuagint and the Masoretic. And what's interesting is that on this year, the first of the, let me go up here to my chart. The first of the 11th month lines up precisely with the end of the second 150 days. So I need to dig further into this, but it leads me to believe that it's possible that the days of Noah were not a 360-day calendar like we tend to think, because it's possible that it was pointing you directly to the day the tops of the mountains were visible, and then 40 days from that, and so on. So it looks like it might have a perfect timeline where all the different measures and day counts line up perfectly, because there's at least 1 year where we have a modern 29.5-day lunar calendar combined with these day counts and dates lining up perfectly. So what's all this mean? It means that I am still very confident, more confident than I was on October 9th, that November 13th could be the day. It fits all the facts from October 9th, plus the days of Noah, and brings in a lot more confirmation. So part of my Revelation and Stars video is the 5 prophecies that prove 2024. That evidence is very, very strong, and if it doesn't happen in 2024, there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to be scratching our head on. Maybe fall of Babylon occurs at a different point in time. I don't know. Just a lot of things don't make sense if it doesn't happen in 2024. And I know that a large portion of the Rapture Watchman community and they've given up on this year because all the feast days have come and gone. I suspect that many aren't looking for the fall of Babylon on the anniversary of the flood and the destruction of a third of the earth to fall on the anniversary of the flood. But when you think about it, there's no better day for it to fall on. The first time by water, the second time by fire. And then everything else in Revelation, the famine, the plagues, the locusts, the wars, all of that is the natural fallout consequences of nuclear winter. So I think we are still on track with everything being fulfilled exactly as it was laid out. And the sign that I saw on October 9th appears to be exactly 7 years from the end of the tribulation. So it was the start of the tribulation on a 7-year timeline. And it marked the end, I guess, of the feast days before the tribulation. I don't know. Either way, we've got a little over a week to prepare yourself and your family and everyone you love to be ready for the rapture, to be make sure you've forgiven everyone in your life, that you're trusting in Him, that you've let go of everything of this world. You don't want to be like Lot's wife, looking back. Just this world is all going to be destroyed by fire. So therefore, how should we live our lives? Now, I could still be wrong. I expected the fire to fall on October 9th, and I was wrong about that. So it's possible I could be wrong. The purpose here is to just analyze the facts, see what makes logical sense, and it's like a puzzle we're trying to piece together. It's the glory of kings to search out a matter, and it's glory of Yah to conceal a matter. So he put it there for us to search it out so that we can learn, we can know Him. And in the process, we've learned more about Scripture, we've learned more about His character, we've learned about His Word, and that's what He wants. He wants us to know Him, and that's the purpose of the study ultimately. But also continue to watch. Let's do not take our eye off the ball at the last second, just because all the feast days have come and gone this year. All right, I'll see you guys next time, if we're still here. Later.